Well, it's an honor to be here. Bob told me not to go a minute over 2 hours, so we're. But no, it was an absolute honor. Bob had asked me last night, and I don't feel like a pinch hitter. I'm a much uglier, taller, older version of Lauren Boebert here, and then we're all freedom fighters. And it's an honor because Bob is, like such a breath of fresh air for someone like me who has watched. With interest, the change in the political scene in the Commonwealth from the time when I was at the University of Virginia in 1993, was working on George Allen's campaign as a student for governor, when at that time, remember, it was flipping from Dem to R. And we were working it hard, right? I was one of those door knockers, those guys out there working it hard in 93 to flip it, and we did. And quick funny story, just down the road in Earlysville, governor had a cabin out there in 93. Oh, let's see, wait, 94. Yeah, 94. So I graduated from UVA and I was staying to get my master's. And I met with him out in Earlysville the day he gave the graduation commencement speech at UVA. And I went out to meet with him because he wanted me to rent his cabin while I was getting my master's degree at UVA. So I went out there and, he'd just given a speech. He got out there, he's like beat up old khakis and a t-shirt, and he's got a dip in his lip, and he's got boots on, he's kicking back. And there was a drawer missing in the chest of drawers that was right there in front of us. Where's the drawer, Governor? He goes, I just took that drawer out, put it in a box, and put it in a bigger drawer at the governor's mansion. And it's because he literally just moved down to Richmond, and so it was literally just right down there that I met with the governor in Earlysville, and didn't end up renting the cabin from him because I lived in the old Jeffersonian part, on the range in Charlottesville. But it's great to be home in a sense. My family's been in Texas since the 1850s. 1853. My great-great-grandmother was born in the district I represent. My great-great-grandfather was a Texas Ranger in the district I represent, fighting Comanches in the 1870s. And where you went to high school, went to college, it's kind of your home, so it feels great to be here. And it's so good. It's so good to have Bob Good representing this part of Virginia and representing Charlottesville, Virginia. And I feel a sense of sort of camaraderie because I know a little bit what that's like. I represent Austin, Texas. And that kind of makes Charlottesville in some ways look like, a warrior for conservatism in some respects. Austin's crazy. I know Charlottesville is too. They can do battle. Austin just maybe got more. But I know what that feels like. I was battling last year. You might know I ran against a woman named Wendy Davis, who was the poster child for Planned Parenthood, wore pink shoes on the floor of the Texas Senate, filibustered for abortion Barbie. That's right. And my friend Eric Erickson named her Abortion Barbie. And so I ran against Wendy. It was a $30 million race. They poured $16 million into tarring and feathering me in Austin, Texas. And so I know a little bit what that's like to represent a very liberal city, but then have God-fearing, solid, Trump-loving, flag-waving conservatives in what I call the Hill Country, in this part of the country here in Virginia. And so I know what it's like. And frankly, I take a great deal of pleasure out of representing a place like Austin, as I assume you do, and Charlottesville a little bit, and that they have to grin and bear the fact that their congressman actually believes in the Constitution and freedom. But as I said, my family's been in Texas since the 1850s, so I did go to UVA, got my master's there. I lived down in Richmond. I lived literally right off of Robert E. Lee Circle. I cannot possibly bear what's going on with Monument Avenue at my time when I lived in Richmond in the 90s. And it's just painful for me to go back to Richmond now when I go down there and see that. But I worked there for a little bit. Actually was back in Charlottesville for a brief time, and then ended up going to law school at the University of Texas. And as Bob said, I've worked in and out of public policy. But that's just my background, to know that I've learned through the years what Bob just alluded to about the importance of the Freedom Caucus and the importance of us holding our own party accountable to do what we say we will do. And we often hear candidates run and say, I just hate it when candidates campaign on one thing, go to Washington and do the other. And I've often said that's not actually the problem. The problem is they look you in the eye and they're doing the opposite of what they tell you they're doing, literally at the moment that they're telling you they're doing something. They're telling you that they're fighting for gun rights, that they're fighting for healthcare freedom, they're fighting to secure the border, and they're literally voting for all the things that undo those things. And so that's one of the things, the reasons I'm proud to be a part of the Freedom Caucus and stand up for freedom and liberty. 10 years ago, come up here in July, I was working for Rick Perry in Austin, Texas. He was the governor. I'd helped him write a book called Fed Up, where we wrote out a lot of ideas about federalism and limited government and what we thought the concerns were at the time. In his experience as governor, my experience on Capitol Hill, working on the Senate Judiciary Committee and having lived through it. And so we wrote this book, and he wasn't planning on running for president when we wrote it. So we had a lot of stuff in there. I called Social Security a Ponzi scheme. You might remember the governor getting hit for that. We talked a lot about states' rights and about the importance of empowering states and federalism. There's a lot of history in there. And look, side note, I'm proud. I'm wearing my UVA coat. Look, they're crazy. They're liberal. It is what it is. But I'm proud to have gone to the University of Virginia, founded by Thomas Jefferson, the history that we have in this great Commonwealth, and I'm not giving up on those things that are ours. These things are ours. I'm not ceding that ground. The University of Virginia is a great institution. It's just being run by idiots. So I want to figure out how to take that back. I want to take the country back. And so I'm proud that I grew up in Loudoun County and I reenacted John Brown's raid in Harper's Ferry, and I went up to Gettysburg and reenacted Pickett's Charge, and I'd go down to Mount Vernon, and I'd go to UVA, and I lived on the range. I'd go out to Monticello. My first job was in Richmond, and I was at St. John's Church where Patrick Henry gave his famous speech. All of these things are part of who I am. It's what I understand. And it's important that we understand that. And I was asking, a reporter was asking me the Capitol yesterday, talking about, do you think there's something you can do, and talk about critical race theory and something? How do we talk about all these dark periods in American history? Guys, we can talk about history. History is history. And you learn history, you live history. And I go over and live and learn John Brown's raid and understand the history of this. We understand it. But I'm proud of this country. I'm proud of a country that, as Bob articulated, that talked about the Declaration of Independence and that we're talking about the greatness of our founding principles, and that within 80 years of the founding, we eradicated slavery in 1863 and the Emancipation Proclamation in September of 63. And then you fast forward, and yes, Juneteenth, and I voted against Juneteenth because it shouldn't be a holiday and it shouldn't be called Juneteenth Independence Day. But it's a day to celebrate when slavery ended. I'm fine with that. And these are the things that are part of our history that we all recognize. But I'm proud of a country that did that for the world. And we should be, and that's why critical race theory, these things matter. 10 years ago when I was working for Governor Rick Perry, I had a 3-month-old daughter and a 4-month-old son, Charlie in Virginia. And we talk about family. My family also goes out on the campaign trail with me a lot. My son likes it a little more than my daughter, my 11-year-old son. But my son's at a Little League game right now. Since we're blessed to not have a cell signal out here, I have no idea how they're doing. I think it's a great blessing not to have a cell signal. But they go on the campaign trail a lot with me. My daughter was 3 months old, Virginia. My daughter's name is Virginia. And it's a family name. That great-grandmother I told you was born in San Marcos, Texas. Her name was Virginia. Everybody assumes it's because I grew up in Virginia. But Charlie is my son, and my wife, Kara. And in July, while I was working with Governor Perry, he's getting ready to run for president. We're setting up a policy committee, and I'm helping him, brush up on policy. And I had a little tickle in my throat that turned into Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so there I was, and staring down the barrel of cancer. And I started treatment on August 15th, the day he kicked off his presidential in Charleston, South Carolina. And I was at MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, starting chemotherapy. And by God's grace and great medicine, the pharmaceutical companies that created a drug that targeted the cancer cells that I was able to use in a trial at MD Anderson, I was cancer-free by October of that year. And so 10 years later, right, I've now been living over the last 10 years with that extra, time on this planet that the Lord gave me. I thought I was done with the public service at that point. I've been a federal prosecutor. I've worked for, in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I've worked for Rick Perry. And then the Lord sort of kicked me in the butt and said, no, you're not. And I recommitted my life to fighting to save a country that I love, that I want to pass down to my kids and grandkids, a country that I'm not going to give up on, a country that I believe in. And that's why I'm in public service. And that's why I then went to be Senator Ted Cruz's chief of staff and helped him get elected and went to Washington. And then that's why I ultimately ran for Congress 3 years ago. And I ran similar, Bob had a list of issues I ran. I ran on what I call healthcare freedom. I ran on securing the border of the United States, balancing the budget, having a military that has the tools it needs and a clear mission to carry it out and to care when they get home. And then I want Washington to stay the hell out of the way of the rest of everything else. Those are the 5 things that I ran on. And so if you think about where we sit right now, and I go through that, and I think about where we look, I'm going to talk a little bit about the negative, but with a direction towards the positive, which is this. I've been asking a lot out there on the campaign trail. I live the immigration and border stuff in real time in Texas. I mean, it's real to us. The district I represent is about 100 miles from Laredo, about 100 miles from Rio Grande. I'm going to be in McAllen on Wednesday with the president and Governor Abbott as well. So I'll be down there, flying home on Tuesday. I'm going to drive to McAllen on Wednesday. I go to the border all the time. And I'm friends with Border Patrol, and we text almost daily. And I'll talk about the border here in a minute. But the question I keep asking people increasingly, with a lot of reverence to the point that I just made about loving our country, is, are we free? And it's a question I think we really got to ask. And I take to heart the point about truth and freedom. I think they go hand in hand. But I think the question here is, are we truly free? And I'm not sure the answer to that is where we want it to be. I don't believe that we're free if we are mortgaging our future, have $30 trillion in debt, spend $6 trillion in a year in the name of a virus while telling our kids that they got to stay out of school or in school with a mask, while killing 100,000 businesses and giving $100 billion to Amazon and spending $6 trillion, inflating our currency, inflating the price of goods and services. Are we free if your government is doing that? If you don't have the strength of the dollar and the ability to go out and create jobs and wealth because your government's interfering? Are we free if we don't have a secure border, if we don't have a sovereign nation? We have cartels who have operational control of the border from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to Big Bend, maybe to El Paso. We have 7,500 pounds of fentanyl coming across our border. 7,500 pounds of fentanyl coming across our border just in the last 5 months. 7,500 pounds that we've intercepted. By the way, an 800% increase in Texas in the 5 months this year over the previous 4 years combined. The guys, I can talk for hours on the border. Whatever you think it is, 10 times worse. It is that bad. We had a car in Bernie, Texas, a suburb of San Antonio, with 9 immigrants in it, 2 in the trunk. The person driving the car was an American citizen, employee of the Cartel de Los Zetas, which operate in Nuevo Laredo. And they were taking the car of 9 immigrants to a stash house in Houston to put them in the sex and labor trafficking trade. We intercepted them, so we stopped that. One of the boys that paid $4,000 to go pick grapes in California thought that's where he was going, and he'd pay the cartels. They have operational control of our border, and it's the cartel, Jalisco New Generation now is absorbing those cartels, and they are a fentanyl-based, narcotics-based organization driving those narcotics into your communities, not just Texas. 80% of all these opioid-related issues across the country are coming to the southwest border. And Governor DeSantis sent help to Texas last week. You all saw that, probably applauded it. He did so because it's impacting Florida. One of the reporters said, why are you doing that? That's Texas, not Florida. He said, all the drugs coming to Texas, most of it's coming to the southwest border. There's a war on your communities. There's a war on your communities right here in Virginia. Drugs, human trafficking, labor trafficking, it's happening right here. Within 50 miles of here, there's human trafficking going on right now. We've got to stop it. Are we free if that's the case? Are we a free people if that's the state of our border? Are we a free people if you can't send your child to a school of your choice, to be educated by a teacher of your choice, to teach the values that you want to teach them? You can't do that right now unless you break the bank or figure out how to send them to a private school. My wife and I do that. We send them to a classical Christian school, Regent School of Austin. It costs me $18,000 a year per kid, $36,000 a year. Kara, my wife, who I met in law school at the University of Texas, she went to A&M undergrad, so she skips the UT part. She leaves that out. She doesn't like that part. She talks about A&M. She works to try to pay for the tuition so our kids can go to that school. That's the model we choose. Some choose homeschooling, right? And that's the choice that you have to wrestle with if you don't want to subject your kids to public schools. Now, I'm a proud graduate of nothing but public schools, K through law school. I did go to the Loudoun County Public Schools. You know what? When I went there, it was a good school. I'm not exactly how I would have done it. There was already the war on our faith that was going on in the Supreme Court and so forth. But by and large, I learned about American values. We said the Pledge of Allegiance. We loved our country. We learned history. Loudoun County Public Schools now is a zone for woke leftists to inculcate their values into the children of the United States. That's the Loudoun County Public Schools right now, and that's true everywhere. Are we free if that's the case? Are we free if the internal combustion engines in every one of those cars, unless there's a Tesla out there, and don't admit if there is, well, I expect guys. But are we free If you can't get the car of your choice, and if you can't be able to afford that, and our ability to frack and have energy to produce American energy independence, which, by the way, has driven CO2 levels down to 1990 levels while China and India are polluting the world. Are we free if you can't get the car, engine, power, energy of your choice? Are you free if the state of Texas, sitting on literally a worldwide supply of oil, if we're having energy problems in Texas because we've built wind farms and solar farms and we haven't built a new nuclear plant or gas-fired plant in ages? Like, why is that? Are we free? Right? I mean, go down list after list about these issues. Are you free if you can't go get the doctor of your choice? You can't unless you break out of the system, you go to a direct primary care clinic, by the way, these are great, and you go get the care that you deserve from a doctor. You can't do that. Why? You have to call some 25-year-old kid in Omaha he works for an insurance company and tells you which doctors are in a network, which are like 2, and tells you how much you got to pay, which is a lot, tells you what your deductible is, while your family has spent $22,000 for the insurance that tells you you can't get the care of your choice. That's your healthcare system, because it's being run by government and run by insurance companies, but not run by you. Yet we just sit back and go, okay, well great, I've got my insurance by my employer. Well, I got to stay with my job because I'll lose my insurance. That's not freedom. I could keep going down the list, but here's what I'm going to say on the positive, and then wind down. As Bob said, I'm rambling, right? That's what happens when you don't have your notes. Here's the hope. The hope is sitting right here with Bob. The hope is sitting right here with all of you. You're here. The hope is sitting here because the eyes of the world, of the American people, the parents that have been opened up, because the veil has been lifted on our schools and all the things going on. I think the good Lord works how the good Lord works. I can tell you one thing we're learning out of this pandemic. People are seeing what happens when you empower somebody like Fauci, you empower the government, you shut down businesses, you shut down schools, and then you have that veil lifted on the public education system. And so we've got an opportunity right now. You go back to 2010, how despondent were you in 2010? Obama, shovel-ready projects, Obamacare, appointing all these radical judges. What was born out of that? Tea Party, 2010. What happened? We ended up pushing back on spending. We had a few years where we were actually reasonably responsible in spending. It's all relative. We pushed in the right direction. But then what happened? Mike Lee was elected in Utah instead of Bob Bennett, the establishment candidate. Rand Paul was elected instead of Trey Grayson in Kentucky, who was Mitch McConnell's preferred candidate. Marco Rubio was elected instead of Charlie Crist, who is a Democrat today in Congress. He was the NRSC preferred establishment Republican candidate for Senate in Florida. In 2012, what happened? Some guy named Ted Cruz, who I happen to know, was elected over David Dewhurst, the preferred establishment candidate in Texas. What happened after that? I go to Washington, I'm Ted Cruz's chief of staff. What do we do in 2013? We fight. We fight to try to stop Obamacare against Eric Cantor, against the establishment. And what happens? They bite back. Who did we meet with? We met with 8 to 10 conservative, rebellious members of the United States Congress in the basement of a place called Tortilla Coast on Capitol Hill. What was that? The nucleus of the Freedom Caucus. From that was born the next year the Freedom Caucus. Then what happened? We're marching together with the Freedom Caucus, with conservatives in the Senate like Cruz and Lee and Rand Paul and others. And then what happened? Donald Trump. Donald Trump ran against the swamp that we've been fighting and building and highlighting all of these things that were broken. And you all were saying, what in the world is happening in Washington? And Donald Trump ran against it, fought it, and was winning with a Congress that wasn't backing him up. And I know that's one of the reasons Bob ran. It's one of the reasons I ran, because I was running against Republicans. Yeah. In 2018, when I ran for Congress, I literally ran my campaign against Republicans. Everything I said, they're not honoring their commitment that they tell you every day that they say they're going to do. We had a little bit of a hiccup in the last election cycle, and we're all a little frustrated about that. But remember where we stand in the arc and the direction and the trajectory. I'm a believer in trajectory. Ronald Reagan was a trajectory shift. Donald Trump is a trajectory shift. But I believe President Trump is reflective of a movement. The same movement that has grassroots Americans who are now frustrated with critical race theory in their schools that are fighting to take over school boards. I've got people I didn't even know. They're not the core activists who are calling me about, hey, what can I do to get involved in wanting to take back our schools? This is terrible. We have the opportunity right now to grab this mantle and take back this great country. That's our calling. And like, I believe it. I have, in Texas, you get a little rambunctious. Of course, Virginians were the original ones, getting rambunctious. And we get a little rambunctious, and I've got some of my constituents who ask me whether or not it is worth it to be part of the union anymore, when our border is no longer secure and our state is under attack. It's a genuine question. They say that with reverence and love for their country, but they say it with one thing that I'm going to say that sometimes a little, causes some controversy. I love this country and I'll fight for it, and I'm going to do everything I can to save it. And I believe we will and we should and we can. But I'm also going to say this, I'm going to live free. I might live free in this country, my preference, but one way or the other, I'm going to live free. I believe, and that's why I'm a proud Virginian. And people in Texas go, well, hey, you were in Virginia, man. And they look a little askance at you. And I say, well, and I walk them through the history about what was so great about Virginia. And we're some of the jokes about, the Virginians, Sam Houston and Stephen F. Austin. But that's great. And the Tennesseans came to Texas. But Texas is an idea, just like America's an idea. And that idea is something that we all know is great that we want to pass down to our kids and grandkids. I'm going to end with this. Bob's not taking the APAC trip to Israel yet, right? Because we didn't get to do it because of the virus. But in 2019, my first year in Congress, we go to Israel and we do a great trip. And I don't know how many of you have been blessed to go to Israel. We're able to take the pilgrimage road with all the archaeology that's been uncovered, and be able to walk up pilgrimage road where Jesus taught. You're in the pool of Siloam, right? You're like, wait a minute, this is actually the pool of Siloam? Are you kidding me? This is real? Yes, this is it. You look and you walk up there, it's like, this is where Jesus walked. And we go through all this history. We go around and we do all the political stuff, if not Netanyahu, and we go up to the Golan Heights, and we're all over the country, and it's wonderful. We're ending on the last night, we're on the Sea of Galilee. And we're on a pier out in the Sea of Galilee. And the last night, and we're among the Baptists, and I belong to the Southern Baptist Church, and so I said there's some trepidation. There was a little wine flowing at the end of the trip. And so one of the girls who worked for APAC went to the University of Alabama, and she went up and there was a bar mitzvah going up on the halfway up the pier. And she goes, hey, will you play Sweet Home Alabama? And they did. So I'm sitting on the pier in the Sea of Galilee, and they're playing Sweet Home Alabama with a Jewish bar mitzvah going on, and I'm like, Jesus is about to walk across the water. This is not the experience I was expecting, sitting on the Sea of Galilee. But then it all stopped, and the people in the bar mitzvah got up, and this is now 45, 50 members of Congress sitting on the pier, and they all got up and they sang in unison, God Bless America. Oh. And they looked at us, and then they one by one passed the microphone around, and they thanked each and every one of us. And they thanked us for what America has meant to Israel, what America has meant for their safety and security, but also that partnership and that friendship. That was obviously extended with President Trump moving the embassy there. But why do I say all of that? Because we are a great country, and we are still the beacon for the world. And we have to remember that. And we get cynical, and we get mad, and we get frustrated, but we're there to fight for each and every one of you. And we're going to keep doing it. And I'm honored to have Bob with me. I'm honored to be in the Freedom Caucus. I'm honored to represent part of the state of Texas and be up there. But most of all, I'm honored by all of you who be here tonight, by choice, to support Bob. And whatever you're giving to support Bob, double it, triple it, whatever it takes. Get friends, double it, triple it. But like, seriously, we need it. Like I said, we're under assault every single day. We're under attack, and the errors are coming in, but we're there representing you guys. Whatever you can do to bring more people into the fold, we need Bob in the United States Congress. We do. He's a warrior for freedom. He's a warrior for school choice. He's a warrior for border security. He's got a measure right now for Central American migration CAM issue that's being abused by the Biden administration. I won't get into all the weeds on that, but he's a warrior for those issues that are so critically important. He's one of my best friends in Congress. He stood up alongside me when I did challenge Elise Stefanik for the conference chair. We're there fighting for you, and we need you, and I just can't thank you enough. I'm honored to be here, and thanks for inviting me, and God bless you all.